Welcome to another episode of Procurement Horizons. My name is Richa Singh, and today we're going to talk about the landscape of digital procurement with Nico Bac. Now, this is a topic of high interest to everyone in procurement these days, so I wanted to bring somebody who's super knowledgeable to guide us. Thank you for joining us, Nico. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all good here. It's kind of a little bit of a dark day in Geneva in Switzerland, and we're kind of a long way from each other. But I'm very happy to be on the podcast and have a chat about a big passion of mine, which is technology and procurement, right? And how to bring them together. So very excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And for everyone watching, here's a little background about Nico. He comes with over 20 years' experience across procurement categories like packaging, contract manufacturing, and IT. He's worked across continents, developed procurement teams while at Procter Gamble. And Nico specialized in digital procurement technology as he initiated and led the first source to pay digital transformation at a grand scale at P&G. This was a global project and it ran for over 6 years, I believe, since 2014. Now, this was a huge success, as you can imagine. The spend under management increased from 70% to over 95%, while creating transparency, controls, and reduced costs. Wow. And the rest, as they say, is history, because that experience led to Nico setting up his own organization, Digital Procurement Now, in Geneva. DP now specializes in strategizing and implementing digital procurement solutions for organizations of varying sizes, including large ones like Nestle. He's a father to three wonderful kids and enjoys skiing in his free time. So, Nico, we're so excited to learn about digital procurement because across industries, there's a huge focus on integration of tech, as you pointed out. What I'm really curious to ask you for our audience is organizations are at such different stages of tech implementation. Like I've seen three of those, right from Procter and Gamble, which was pretty advanced, to the German organization, which was quite nascent, and to banking, where it was somewhere in the middle. Now, what would be most critical, as per you, for organizations in 2025 to grow their procurement tech?
You always have to start with what's the need of the business, right? And I think if you look at the ability for procurement to create value, it's pretty different in a maybe manufacturing heavy company versus a services company versus a retailer or hospitality company. So you always have to start with, okay, so what do we want to achieve with procurement, and then how can technology help
Mm,
accelerate delivering what you want to achieve with procurement? So when you've been buying and you've been managing categories, you always start with a category management strategy. So,
mhm,
what is it that you want to achieve, and how will you achieve it? And it's about
mhm,
creating a competitive edge. And I think we should look at it the same way when you look at technology for procurement. So, start with
mhm,
what do you want to achieve? What do
mhm,
stakeholders want to achieve? What do
mhm,
what does the business want procurement to achieve, and then start from there and then see, okay, what technology is really useful, and can really help accelerate
mhm,
that journey. And yeah, you have to be realistic in terms of where you start. There's these procurement maturity, kind of,
mhm,
where are you in this cycle, and I think you have to start with where the organization is. So it's always kind of tempting to talk about kind of high end, and sometimes you have to start with the basics often in terms of your data. Procurement is allowed to control, own, and then really build your reputation from there. So
Well, that's a great call out, starting with the business needs, and I remember that's at the heart of everything we do in procurement. Sometimes we tend to get waylaid because change is not easy for anyone, and add to that working across large teams. So yeah, so it has its challenges. Now, Aniko, it would be very interesting to note, like, how does your approach vary? Like, whether you're working with let's say, a regional client or local client to a global client, how does that look like?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you have a wide range of client, right? From small
Mhm,
companies to really, really big ones, kind of the size
mhm,
of Procter and Gamble.
mhm,
And I think kind of where we differ from maybe some of the other people that provide advisory in this space is that we really approach it from a practitioner point of view. So I'm a practitioner. I really love the procurement profession. I think it's one of the coolest professions in the world. And
Mhm.
I think that the ability for procurement to attract more talent into procurement is also driven by our ability to leverage technology to
Mhm.
actually handle the simple tasks. So therefore, then procurement can focus on where we can make a real difference to our business.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things that become easier when you apply the right technology. If I take the example of Procter Gamble, there were definitely areas where the relationship between the business and procurement wasn't what it should be, and
Mhm.
procurement hadn't focused enough on making it easy for the business, to work with suppliers, or kind of empower them um,
Mhm.
to create like partnerships with suppliers to drive the business. And I think if you have good and easy to use tech, you can really change the relationship between the business and procurement. And I think when you've done that, you become a kind of business partner versus maybe somebody that's um, you know, you know, trying to enforce a cumbersome procurement process. So I'm sure you're
Mhm.
familiar with
Mhm.
similar situations, like a bank, for example. It's a very different environment than Procter and Gamble or consumer goods, where manufacturing and procurement has been around for decades and decades to deliver value. So very diverse environments for sure, and it takes some time to get into it and really see how to deliver value from the point where people really are when we start. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. And you're right. Like, there's this whole different ways of operating. And yeah, we have the base of coming from an organization which had a relatively mature procurement organization to, seeing newer procurement functions. And what you're talking about, like, having those relationships with internal partners as well as suppliers, like letting it be kind of seamless. Like, that's how it comes across to me. I mean, that would be an excellent thing to talk about, Nico, like, just to give people an idea of what that would look like, how that runs, because I'm sure like a lot of people, they haven't seen that in action as
Mhm.
much.
Yeah, yeah. It's what I find very interesting is that the people that have been through a transformation
Mhm.
of procurement with technology, the only way to believe what you can do is to have gone through it once or twice. And I think that
Mhm.
as this technology is maturing, there's more and more people that have been through it. But there's still quite some. I mean, procurement people are not always easy to convince of something new, right? Because I think that suppliers often come with nice stories about what they're selling, etc. So we are a little bit
Mhm.
kind of we kind of the opposite of gullible. But when it comes to
Mhm.
technology, I do think that procurement is too conservative
Mhm.
and often still on the fence, right? I really believe that the future of procurement is digital, and
Mhm.
if you don't spend time to understand what's out there, and kind of what the elements are, or what maybe the categories are. I think often it's
Mhm.
good to start with things like analytics,
Mhm.
understanding kind of, okay, where do we spend the money, what results, and visualizing what procurement is already achieving, to get more buy-in to what we are doing and get more confidence from the business that this is a good area to invest in. So yeah, there's
Mhm.
many elements there. A big one is the people aspect. I mean, do people believe that with technology we can really make a significant step change in how we operate? Try it out and learn your way into it. Maybe don't make all the mistakes that I have made in my career, because
Mhm.
there's been quite a few. And talk to peers as well. There's a lot of
Yeah.
others that are looking into this as well, and they are looking to learn.
Mhm.
And kind of sharing experiences, good and bad, is, I think, a good way to maybe avoid some of the mistakes that others have made in this space.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you're right. Like, this gives us an idea of the kind of practitioner view that you were talking about, like starting with the business needs, like just assessing where we are, looking at what is there data wise, what we can find, and then just bringing together people and like, leveraging all of that. Like that sounds like the right approach, and thanks for sharing that. Now, Nico, I know there's lots of options out there in the market, for procurement tech these days. I go through your LinkedIn posts, and to be honest, like I sometimes, don't get like what exactly because there's so many things that is possible now. So
Yeah.
it'll be great to get an idea like how would DP now strategize and help a client decide the right tech suite.
If you look at how many solutions are out there in the
Mm,
procurement space, I don't know. I always encourage people to go to DPW. There's an annual conference in Amsterdam, and
mhm,
that's where the kind of the digital procurement community comes together. So you have all the providers there. You have
mhm,
practitioners that are looking for tech to transform the business, and there's also quite some investors. So companies are looking to or have
mhm,
invested in certain procurement startups or venture
mhm,
capital, etc. So, but when you go there, it's kind of overwhelming because everybody talks, "Oh, we are the procurement platform," and kind of quite some hype. Everybody talks about
mhm,
AI. Everybody talks about the easiest to use kind of platform, and we bring data together.
mhm,
I think what's the starting point for most companies is that procurement runs in their ERP system.
mhm,
You have direct spend, you have indirect spend, and I think you have a lot of kind of sexy procurement technology solutions, but you can't
mhm,
really integrate that with your
mhm,
ERP system. The gap is just too
mhm,
big between what that tech
mhm,
can provide and the ability to create APIs into
mhm,
SAP to take advantage of some of that tech. So the best first step is to say, well, ERP is not designed for procurement. Let's go to a platform that is cloud-based, that allows me to collaborate with my suppliers at scale,
mhm,
leverage supplier network, get all the suppliers. And I think that's a hard. It's a hard thing to do, right? It's a big
mhm,
change, but that
mhm,
then allows you to take advantage of many of these other
mhm,
solutions because they have APIs into these kind of procurement platforms. So you kind of
mhm,
move your process into the cloud, you make it user friendly, you get people to adopt it. So you take care of all the basics. And then I think you're much better placed to take advantage of some of these kind of innovative, cool solutions. And
mhm,
now you can make sure that all the solutions communicate with each other. Because I think one of the things you don't want to have is buying a couple of solutions and data doesn't flow between solutions, and you get kind of more data silos, which is not something that you want. I think
mhm.
you should say that all your solutions are connected and data flow has to happen between solutions.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a critical point. Everything communicating together. I felt like that's where a lot of companies are stuck at. Like they have taken a few different solutions at different times, and now they're just kind of struggling with what to do with it. And also, I kind of like while talking to you, I realized that, you were mentioning procurement can be a bit conservative coming across when we think about technology. And the part of the reason is education. Like we need to step out there into conferences about digital procurement, and we need to understand and educate ourselves about the host of solutions, and it kind of starts from there, right? So yeah. And another thing, ERP, that's where I have seen the challenge that people try to integrate everything to that. And instead of that, yes, it would be much easier if we're thinking more holistically about the cloud-based solutions, which are anyways going to be the future.
ERP systems are really designed for finance. They're not designed for
Hmm.
procurement. And they're designed to
Hmm.
optimize internal business processes. And if you
Yeah.
look at the software that's being developed, connect with your clients, and you look
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
client relationship management software,
Hmm.
where I think Salesforce is the market leader. I mean, they sell more software now than SAP does. So you see that people have been quite comfortable to invest in capability to manage relationship with clients better and to be able to grow the business. Now,
Hmm.
procurement is kind of the other end of the spectrum, where you look at, okay, how can I create productivity in the way that we work with our vendors.
Hmm.
And I think the big difference is that the number of things that you sell as a company is often maybe 1% of the number of things that you buy as a company,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
the complexity is much bigger. You buy many different categories, and but I think the ability to kind of move that whole process to the cloud. So you have e-sourcing and purchase order management and catalogs and invoicing kind of all together is a very, very good first step. So but I mean, there's quite, you have to bring a few functions together. You can't just say as a procurement function like, oh, we're going to do this. It's really a business transformation, and you have to kind of figure out a way to get it pretty high on the agenda of kind of um, corporate initiatives and kind of what the priorities are for your business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The takeaway for me from that one is we're so like invested in trying to set up the basics right, that right now we're not really focusing a lot on the new things that are coming out there. And there are lots of category solutions, like I heard in one of your podcasts or posts, you were talking about a host of other solutions. It's important to start with the basics, but there are so many different ways of improving productivity out there, and I think that'll also be a good starting point for some people to know about, Nico, if you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that technology is here to make our lives easier. That's always the starting point. So when you think about the life of the business that wants to
Hmm.
get something from suppliers, or it's really getting into the persona that you're serving. So
Hmm.
one of the things we started to do, and it was a bit scary in the beginning, but we had the idea to measure the net promoter score of the business when it comes to the procurement process. So it's a little bit like when you get to through
Hmm.
customs, or you have these three buttons, right?
Right.
The orange and the red, and
Hmm.
you collect input about your business process, right? And it was a very good way for us to understand what the pain points were, right? And I think
Hmm.
for a long time we were reasoning far more from our kind of what we
Hmm.
wanted to achieve
Hmm.
versus what the business wanted to achieve, right? And I think
Hmm.
starting to measure how happy the business was with the procurement process gave us a lot of insights and ability to say, hey, let's use that energy and to kind of fix it and to really focus all the work we do in procurement on making the business more successful. And it was it was definitely very, very interesting thing to do. And when you get the business on board, you can do a lot, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
it takes some time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's lovely actually. Net Promoter Score, that's so innovative because it brings together everyone and you're focusing on the right things, and it's also closely tied to productivity. Okay, awesome. Another question that I was thinking, we're talking about business needs. Procurement operations plays a very strong role in driving this. But also, I feel sourcing and procurement teams outside of procurement operations also have a role to play. And that role is going to evolve in the future. So sometimes when I see on the ground where we're learning, we're getting the training, we're helping with the deployment, but I still feel like it seems like a little reactive, and we can be a bit more proactive on that. What would that proactiveness look like over there?
Is to kind
Hmm.
of how do you bring things together? And in the past, people said things like supplier relationship management is not something that technology can take over. I mean, it's the role of technology to improve things there was often questioned. And when I think about like the taxi industry, I mean, if you look at what Uber has been able to do, I mean, the relationship between the driver and the customers is all digitized, and um, you kind of see that it's all automated, and it's digital end to end, and there's no way that a service organization, no matter how good they are and how customer focused they are, etc., can ever match the ability for these algorithms to match drivers to locations of passengers, etc., right? There's just a lot of things that you can simply not achieve with manual processes, right? And what we learned is that when we digitized it, we reduced dramatically the number of people involved, but also the service levels dramatically increased. The only thing that the service centers were then managing was exception management. It was like something that wasn't quite the way it should, or
Mhm.
it really changed the game. And I mean, that was for me the driver of, hey, if has such a big impact on the ability for procurement to deliver value to the business, why are we not kind of all kind of getting more into this space? I decided
Mhm.
to focus all my attention and effort into that space as a big passion to change the future of procurement through technology. So, and it's a journey. It's
Mhm.
but we all
Mhm.
see the amount of attention, and I think more and more people understand the transformative capability of technology. Um, US is a bit further than Europe here. I always hate to say that, but yeah, it's.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's there's more. The culture is also more open to try new things in general than over here. So, but hey, we shouldn't fall behind too far. So that's
Yeah,
also passion.
I see you mentioned that in some of your posts, and I can relate to that, and I can see that you're trying to, yeah, like share that with more people and help them see that how it's different. So, and yeah, like you're right, like the technology is continuously evolving, and we need to be able to keep up with it, and there's always going to be more, but also like it's helping us be better, do better work, simplify things. So yeah, it's enabler for sure. So we've talked about like very different lenses today, Nico, and I know we've also talked about some challenges that you've seen. Like if I were to ask you, what would be like the three most common and biggest challenges you've seen with these kinds of implementations, and how like do you think they can be addressed jointly,
Mhm.
with the right collaboration between different stakeholder teams involved? Like, I know
Yeah,
it's a loaded question. A
yeah,
lot's
yeah.
there.
Yeah, no, I think that so what the way it normally works is, right, you have a project team, you kind of develop a kind of a problem statement, kind of strategy, then you go into selection, you select a provider, and then you select a system integrator, some company that can help you bring this to life, right?
Mhm.
And I think the word system integrator is not the right word, because getting the systems to
Mhm.
technically talk to each other
Mhm. Mhm.
is
Mhm.
is the very basics, right? Actually,
Mhm.
the project only starts when the systems start talking to each other, right? Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and the big thing, and I think it's a really important one, is that when you have many different people that work
Mhm.
use the same system, that people use it in a very consistent way, right? And I think what you often
Mhm.
see, and I think also when you look at adoption of a CRM program like Salesforce, or that the data, some people put a lot of effort in getting really good data to the system, and some people do as little as
Mhm.
possible, just enough to get the you know to meet the minimum requirements. And you have this wide
Mhm.
range of how much
Mhm.
time and effort, and how people think about this work. And if you ask five people, why do we do this, you get different answers. And you realize that that the weakness often is the amount of change management, and to get people to really understand why we are doing this, and get some consistency in how people use the technology that's out there, right? And I think the big thing is actually soft skills, right? So one of the
Mhm.
reasons I'm so attractive to this is like, why
Mhm.
is some stuff like easily adopted and fast adopted, and some other stuff, you take years and years and years before kind of most people are using it in the right way.
Mhm.
um, and that's soft. I mean, there's quite some research around adoption, and then you segment the user base
Mhm.
into innovators, early adopters, early majority, late
Mhm.
majority, and laggards. So where do you put your energy, right? I mean, you want
Mhm.
everybody to use it, but
Mhm.
my experience is that you really focus your energy on the innovators and the early adopters. Those are the people that are open to change, they're open to try new things.
Mhm.
When they get into this and they like it, and that kind of means that you have to come with sexy technology. If you have technology that looks like it was developed 10, 15 years ago, you don't get the innovators
Mhm.
excited about it. And if they don't get excited about it, then they can't get other people excited about it. And then you spend many, many years on something that might become a dead horse. That's another one. I think if you have spent many years and you're not getting the results that you're looking for, then maybe you should make some dramatic changes, and you shouldn't be afraid to
Mhm.
switch your technology out, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I see companies that keep working adoption, on the technology 5-10 years, and they don't get the results they're looking for, and that, for me, that's a sign that something has to
Mhm.
change. You have to really
Mhm.
change something to, and sometimes it means you have to start all over again, and that might be a painful exercise, but it's
Yeah.
sometimes part of the journey.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a holistic view of the whole journey, like starting from systems talking to each other and like without even that happening. I mean, for some companies that'll or and people listening to this, it'll be a new revelation that until the systems are talking to each other, you haven't even started the right game. So I really like that. And then obviously, change management is the biggest one. To your point, it's where everything lies. Nobody likes stuff being deployed to them, so that early engagement, those innovators, early adopters, they can make a huge difference with word of mouth. And
Yeah,
yeah, I also love your insight about not being afraid to start from scratch, because if some of the pieces are not coming together and you've spent energy, time, productivity on trying to do that, then maybe it's not the right fit, and yeah, you need to start from scratch. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that can be painful. It's a journey that it's very exciting. Something's happening. Another one is that
Mhm.
to attract good talent into your team, I think
Mhm.
it's very important that the team is ambitious and have ambitious targets, right? So
Mhm.
a part of the slogan of the company is passionate people, right? That
Mhm.
and I mean, the work is hard. It's integrations, going live, getting ready, testing. It's definitely kind of
Mhm.
stressful because you go into new areas, you go into areas where you probably haven't been before, right? So
Mhm.
um, another one is that to really change, let's say, the buyers or suppliers. So let's say the buyers, right? So
Mhm.
recruiting like ambassadors within the organizations that you're looking to
Mhm.
change, and
Mhm.
then it allows you to change the behavior and the way that people work from the inside. I think
Mhm.
it's far more effective than people that are trying to change it from the outside, right? And I think that's why
Mhm.
identifying these innovators and early adopters in those organizations and give them a leg up, right, is to kind of build their capability, have them be very
Mhm.
proficient in the use of the tools,
Mhm.
and then they take it to their organization, right? But they're changing from the inside. I think is far more effective than trying to change large groups from the outside. It's
That is true. Those innovators and early adopters, the more spread out they are across the organization, the better it is in adoption, because then you get that multifold adoption, and it's much smoother. It just helps me remember a lot of pain points that I have come across. And I also like the point about talent. People have different views about that. Like, to every organization, there's a set of cultural values that most of them are looking for. And yeah, passion was a called out value for P&G, and it is there for a lot of organization in some way or the other. But I also see that ambition is a word that can be treated very differently across cultures, and you would have experienced that. So like, just an observation there. So this kind of an implementation, it takes a lot of effort, time, energy, like working on weekends, working out at night times, to address simple customer queries that not everybody would see why it's important to the bigger picture, but it is.
if you want a easy life, then maybe you should pass on the opportunity
Mm,
for transforming. It's the people that are looking for action that are best placed to drive these efforts, and it requires stamina as well. I think that um, and
mhm,
I mean, you'd be surprised by how many different stakeholders these transformations have.
mhm,
Indirect tax, compliance in this area, that area, internal controls. I mean, there's a lot of
mhm,
people that want to have a say, or and sometimes people spend forever to get stakeholders aligned. And another approach is to say, well, we get the main stakeholders, we are 80% ready, let's go live. And then when we need to adjust things later on, we
mhm.
do we do that. And I'm a I'm a fan of the second approach, because
Good.
you never reach perfection. You will only really learn about what you put together and how it really works in practice after you go live, right? Then you see, okay, how, I mean, the approvals, do they work? I mean, do people understand?
Mhm.
Then you can really start learning. So relatively short design phase, keep it as simple as you can, and then when you go live, feel free to then adjust it, right, to make it work better. And designs are not set in stone. You're not building a solution, you're configuring a solution, so you can change it later on. You shouldn't worry about that too much.
That's super insightful. Like perfectionism can hurt here as well. And like that 80/20, I believe, is like the right sweet spot, where you have enough preparedness and then preparedness to even tackle what comes later. And like you said, starting small and focusing on those pilots and taking
Yeah,
small steps.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
And I think maybe there's one
Huh.
other area, and it might be a little bit like a boring area, but
Okay.
um, the data structures that you
Mm,
have in terms of suppliers, or like categories that you buy in, etc. And a lot of these
mhm,
data structures have not been really touched for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. And
mhm,
they often are too complex. And actually, when you read the description, you don't really understand what they mean. And it's a bit like, okay, well, if you buy a new car but you keep using the same dirty fuel,
mhm,
the
mhm,
performance of that car is not going to be that great. And it's kind of one element that I think the team that drives the transformation should not be afraid to take ownership for the data structures and say, when you go
mhm,
into run the new car, we're going to actually run it on clean fuel. So we're gonna simplify the data structures. We're gonna rename them so people know what they actually mean.
mhm,
And I think it's one element that often doesn't get
mhm,
enough attention. And then complex structures that are not well understood, when you move them into a new system, there still
mhm,
be complex structures that are not well
mhm,
understood.
mhm,
The opportunity to get a few things right at the same time, because people expect change when they get into a new system, right? So
mhm,
it's the time to come with new data
mhm.
structures. Yeah.
Love that. I remember that somebody in your team back at PNG had given me this insight while that transformation was going on, that you cannot outsource something broken. So I feel like what you're sharing is this, right? Like we're repairing that data and like using that in the best possible way before we outsource it. Or this was super helpful, Nico. And I just want to share with everyone that I will drop the link to your Nico's website in the comments. I'm sure like this is just going to be a start to all the wonderful things that are possible with digital procurement. And if you'd like to get in touch with Nico afterwards, and I'll also drop in his LinkedIn LinkedIn profile, because he has some insightful posts which help with my education a lot. So I hope that helps everyone. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up, Nico?
No, I mean, for me, is don't be afraid to be bold. I see too many procurement people that are
Hmm.
not bold enough. We can achieve a lot more, and have much more interesting work if we are more bold in the digital space, or in terms of what we can deliver and achieve to our business. So I think that's
Hmm.
maybe the last thing I would say. And thank you very much, Richard, for the opportunity. I think it's very open conversation, and as you said, right, I'm very happy to help people kind of frame these things in their businesses, and see how to get these type of things moving, right? And
Hmm.
that's so.
Great. Yeah. To more boldness and procurement. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.